Greetings YouTube, Alan Lube here, and it's been a while. I have not posted a video in a while. I definitely have been on a bit of a flesh and blood break, and a lot of my friends have been on break too with the testing and stuff like that. But I come back with another classic tier list video. And this time I wanted to do something a little different. So this is actually my second time recording a video like this, but originally when the Battle Hardened Portland was happening and Prism looked like she was potentially going to Living Legend, I decided to make a tier list for what the meta would look like once Prism Living Legends. So this is what I'm going to do. This is what I imagine a Post Prism World will look like. And before I get into it, please like, comment, subscribe. If you think I'm dumb for any of my ratings, please let me know in the comments. It helps with the algorithm. And yeah, before I get into the tier list, I wanted to say that a lot of people seem to say that Prism is good for the meta and is the reason why we have such a healthy meta. I would like to counter that argument and say that I think that Prism is good, is a good part of the meta, but she is not the reason we have a good meta. Like, I don't think the fact that she gatekeeps certain decks is the reason why we have a healthy, quote-unquote, healthy meta, as a lot of people would say. But I think having a unique hero that requires unique solutions and a unique game plan to play around is just a good addition to the game. So first, this is a Prism Living Legend tier list, so let's just put her over in the Living Legend gang with Starvo and Chain. Yeah. Alright, so what do I expect to be the best decks post-Prism? Well, I don't think it's changing too much. I think Viserai, Briar are still going to be like the top aggro decks. I think Fi may potentially go up there also, but I'm not quite sure yet, just because people have been testing around with Kodachi Fi. And I think that Kodachi Fi is interesting, but I don't know if it's like as good as like Viserai and Briar. So Viserai and Briar, I'll immediately put an S. They're just really good at what they do. Viserai, I would think, is a little harder to play, but and is a little more, what's the word, high rolly. Whereas Briar is a little bit more consistent, a little easier to play, and both are very strong in my opinion. And then up with them, I would say Oldhim is up there. I don't think Oldhim necessarily gatekeeps that many decks, but depending on who you ask, like the Oldhim versus Runeblade matchup seems to be like very skilled, or not very skilled, but like a lot of good Oldhims will say they have a good matchup, and then a lot of good Runeblades will say like, oh, Oldhim is free, not free, but like favored. So I don't really know, but I expect Oldhim to be very good. I think even though I'm a Bravo main, I think Oldhim is the better Guardian. He just has more options. Like Crown of Seeds is like so good, and then honestly, I've thought about switching over to Oldhim, but relearning all my matchups in time for nationals might be too hard. But who knows? Maybe I'll play a bunch of Oldhim to test it out. Moving on to A tier, I would say that Bravo is right behind. Bravo has good play into the Runeblades, and then Bravo versus Oldhim, I think, is a very skill testing matchup. I think depending on who you ask, they'll say Oldhim or Bravo is favored. But overall, I think in these like sort of Guardian mirrors, the better player usually wins, regardless of who they are piloting. So I think it's very close, but I do think just Oldhim has more play probably into the Runeblades than Bravo does, but I will need to test more. Moving on into my other A tier pick would be Fi. So there's been potential with Kodachi Fi. I've heard there's a Kodachi Fi that's doing really well at the Calling Singapore. But you know, there's a lot of draft in Calling Singapore as well, so you can't take, you know, records 2 at face value. But yeah, I think, okay, this is what people are afraid of, right? The post Prism World is going to be like Guardians and Runeblades, and then throw Fi in there too as like a good aggro deck. But the reason I put anti-meta right here in their own tier is because I expect these next 3 decks to sort of like challenge the meta in their own unique way, and I think that arguably will lead to a better meta than what we have with Prism currently. So I think the anti-meta decks are going to be Iyslander, Dromai, and there's one more. Is there one more? I feel like there's one more. Is it Lexi? No, it's not Lexi. Dorinthia? No. Maybe it's just these 2 for now. So I have Iyslander. Oh, Dash. That's what it was. So I have Iyslander, Dromai, and Dash as the sort of anti-meta decks. These are all heroes that sort of challenge a certain aspect of the game. Iyslander, I think, in an ideal world, has play into both the aggro decks and the Guardians with the Frost-Hex OTK and disrupting and playing a more mid-rangey disruption game plan against the aggro decks. Dromai supposedly dunks on the Guardians, I can see it happening with Oldhim, but I have yet to see it in practice versus Bravo. I still think, at least all the at least in my testing, I haven't felt that Dromai is oppressive as a Bravo player yet. But I do imagine that as people learn how to play Dromai better, there is a high possibility that she's favored into Bravo. So I won't question that there. Dash is interesting because she has access to Teklo Pounder now, so she can try to race the aggro decks, even though she's like not necessarily favored in those. But she could go back to like a more controlling style to like beat Oldhams and Bravos with things like Plasma Purifier and Induction Chambers. I don't know how good Dash will be in that sense, but that possibility is still there. So Prism gatekeeped Icelander and Dromai in my opinion. Dromai has still like topped some events, even though there's like a high representation of Prism. So Dromai already had play into Prism, but in my opinion, Prism was still favored. Icelander definitely gatekeeped by Prism to an extent. Like the same reason why I don't want to bring Bravo or Oldhim into a meta that has Prism. Same reason goes for Icelander, unless you like gem your way through. But so yeah, I think this will lead to an interesting meta where the aggro decks and the Guardians will still like be the center of it, but you have like these new decks coming into play for sure. Actually, let me add one more. I think I'm gonna add Dorinthia to A tier. Post Prism. One of Dorinthia's hardest matchups, or no, Dorinthia's hardest matchup in my opinion was Prism, and now that Prism is gone, she has good play into all the aggro decks, because her Dawnblade is just so threatening. And then she has play into the Guardians, although I don't think she's necessarily favored into the Guardians, but I do think she's very good. I think the Icelander Dory matchup is also very interesting in skill testing. If they have Oasis or something, then I don't think it's too bad. Dory is also usually favored into Dromai just because like her Dawnblade just goes to like 10 if you play too many dragons. Dash, I'm unsure of. I imagine it's probably Dory favored, but we'll see. So I think Dory is like another big contender that can come back into the meta once Prism Living Legends. Moving on to the B tier, I'll probably just throw Katsu, Lexi, maybe throw Reinar in there too. So Lexi definitely has play into the aggro decks, but the game is a lot more explosive now than it was back then. I think if Lexi misses a turn, then the aggro decks can just like spit out like a Mordred Revel turn or like a CMH turn, and then it's very hard for Lexi to come back. Lexi also struggles into the Guardians. I would say she struggles into Dorinthia as well. So I don't think Lexi's in a great spot post Prism, even though Prism was also pretty favored into Lexi. But yeah, I don't think her matchups get better too much. Katsu has some play, but I don't think he's that great. I think he's not favored into any of the other three aggro decks. And then the Guardians are also usually somewhat tough for Katsu to get through. Dory, Katsu is probably like another skill testing matchup based on how your deck is built and how you play the matchup. So yeah, I think Katsu's just, he's fine. He's not going to do great in my opinion. And then everyone else I'll just throw in C tier. The order doesn't, I'd probably order it like this if I had to guess. Or no, I didn't talk about Reinar yet. Reinar, I honestly have no idea. He probably has some play. I think you can either run him as like a pummel based, like mid-range style, or like a barraging beatdown, try to kill them style. But one of Reinar's supposed best matchups was Prism. And once Prism's gone, I don't think he has great play into the rest of the meta. He definitely struggles into aggro usually, and the Guardians still aren't like amazing matchups for him unless the Guardians are super defensive. So I don't think he'll do too much, but yeah. I don't know, maybe I'll move Levia up to B2. Maybe Mansant will do something crazy with her, but I think with Crown of Providence, like being able to fix like that one bad hand that'll cost you the game is pretty huge. So maybe Levia will like do some stuff too. And then my three C tier heroes, Kano, Azalea, Bolton. It doesn't really matter how you order them. I think the issue with Kano is that Icelander is going to be more popular post Prism, and people will be teching things like Null Rune and Oasis, so Kano can't really thrive in that situation in my opinion. Bolton, he has the Sabres combo, but just in a longer event, it's not consistent enough to do well. Like you can definitely spike ProQuests and RTNs with Bolton, but yeah, once again, I don't think at a larger event he's going to be highly represented or top an event. And then Azalea has play into the aggro decks for sure with like Red in the Ledger spam, but like into almost like everyone else she struggles, so that's why I don't think she's in a great spot. So this is how I feel the meta is going to shape out once Prism is gone. I don't think this meta is necessarily going to be a bad one. I think if everyone in your local area just defaults to Guardian and Runeblade, then sure, it can feel a little monotonous, I guess, a little boring. But I definitely think there's a lot of play with like Dorinthia, Icelander, Dromai, Dash. Less so Dash. I'm less confident about Dash, but definitely Dorinthia, Icelander, Dromai, I think will come out to play. Dromai, I think, yeah, should be favored into Oldhim, theoretically. Not sure in practice. Theoretically favored into Bravo from what I hear, but I haven't seen it in practice again either. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens once Prism is gone. As a Guardian player myself, it'll be interesting. But yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. Like most Guardian players are already cutting cards from for their Prism matchup. Like I already cut Lead the Charges and stuff like that. So yeah, it will be interesting for sure. Will she win the Colony Singapore or like a Battle Hardened before Nationals? Who knows? If she doesn't Living Legend and she's back for National season, then my tier list is basically the same as the old tier list, where Prism is back in at the top, and then Oldhim moves down, Bravo moves down. Well, yeah, but yeah. So I think it'll be very interesting to see the meta post Prism. This is how I expect it to shape out. The letter ratings are less about power at that moment, but because for example, Icelander may be S tier, right? But I just put her in the anti-meta tier just because I don't know exactly how it'll shape out. If she is good enough to beat the Guardians and the Runeblades, then like things will change and shift for sure, for example. But for now, I'll just put her here because I'm not confident of what exactly will happen. But yeah, this was my list. Let me know what you guys think. And I'll see you around. Maybe with some Oldhim gameplay or something.